Hey everyone, welcome back to another late night dive into Reddit's creepiest corners. Today's lineup is disturbing, shocking, so grab a drink, grab a snack, get comfy, and let's get into these twisted Reddit stories. Oh, and if you enjoy these stories, smash that like button and subscribe. You don't want to miss what's coming next. She poisoned me. My parents got married while still in high school. I wouldn't recommend this, the 12th grade to be exact. They were legal adults. I came just a year later when my mom was 19 and my dad was 20. We lived in a one-bedroom upstairs apartment in a crappy complex. I slept in my crib until I started climbing out of it and finding my way into my parents' bed or into trouble. When I was 4, my parents decided I needed my own room, so they upgraded to a 2-bedroom downstairs apartment in the same complex. They fought horribly all the time, but outside of that, everything was pretty normal. I made a few friends with other children around the complex, and a cousin and her 3 kids also lived in the complex. Everything was fine until a new neighbor moved in next door when I was 6. Immediately, this lady didn't like me, and she didn't hide it. I was at school when she moved in, but on the weekends, when I went out to ride my big wheel bike and play, she stood in her door and glared at me with the most hateful look a person could give a child. To be honest, I didn't like her either. Something about her bothered my spirit greatly, though at the time I didn't understand why. It's like she could sense my presence outside and would literally spawn outdoors just to glare daggers at me and mutter things under her breath. I felt an evil presence on her and started making a cross with my fingers whenever I saw her. This enraged her, and she lied and told my mom that I threw her a middle finger. My mom believed me instead. Strange things started happening in my room at night. I had a rocking horse. It was beautiful and I enjoyed playing on it. However, it started rocking on its own whenever I tried to sleep. My parents heard this as the springs made a distinctive noise. I had one of those dolls that had eyes that opened and closed, depending on whether it was lying down or sitting up. The doll's eyes would sometimes remain open while lying down, or it would blink, scaring the crap out of me. There would be strange knocking noises in my wall. My parents heard this as well, and they permitted me to sleep with them in bed. One day, my mom and I got locked out of our apartment. This was before everyone had cell phones, the 90s, and our cousin wasn't home. My mom, against my pleas, knocked on the neighbor's door to use her phone. She let us in, glaring at me the entire time. I never let go of mom's hand or came from behind her leg. In her house, on her wall, were multiple upside-down crosses, strange-looking masks, some with horns. There were candles everywhere and small, colorful bottles with powder in them. My mom looked around like WTF, but kept her composure. She held my hand tighter, made the phone call to my dad at his job to hurry back now, and we quickly exited the apartment after thanking the woman. She watched me as we left. My mom told my dad everything, and he told his father, my grandfather, who was a pastor. He immediately brought us a bottle of prayed over olive oil, holy oil, to anoint our house. My mom also told her side of the family, who were very strict Christians, and they were, for lack of a better word, flabbergasted, and started a prayer meeting. A few days later, we noticed at our back door a white powder substance across the threshold. My mom poured some of the oil on it, and it absorbed it and disappeared. The woman later tried to offer me some candy, which I declined, though I loved sweets. My nickname was Sugar Ant because I loved junk so much. I had made friends with a little girl in the complex who lived on the other side. One day, she had some soft chews and offered me one. Like an idiot, I accepted and ate it. It didn't take long before I fell violently ill. Fever, sweating, skin darkened, dark circles around the eyes. Nothing given to me at the doctors helped. I couldn't keep anything down. On intuition, my mom asked, did I had accepted and eaten anything from anyone, and I confessed to accepting candy from a friend. She asked around and found out the girl was the granddaughter of our next-door neighbor. My dad called over my grandfather and my mom, her family. They anointed me with holy oil and made a prayer circle around me and started speaking in tongues. I was in and out of consciousness. My grandfather lifted me and made me drink some of the oil. I remember it burning my throat. Suddenly, I had to throw up. I leaped from the couch where I was lying and sprinted to the bathroom, where I started throwing up a thick, black sludge. A lot came out. My mom was shaking and on the verge of tears. Everyone continued praying in tongues. I threw up for a while until it was all out. I suddenly felt a lot better. I was fussed at for accepting food from strangers, even friends. The adults talked while I rested. After a few days, the woman saw that I was fine. This time, I glared at her back as I was angry. I was young, but I understood she had tried to poison me for no reason. I made the cross sign, again with my fingers, and she went back into her house and slammed her door. She moved out sometime after that. Before the next story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment below and let me know which story you enjoyed the most. I'm not going to hurt you. Remembering these words still sends a chill up my spine. This was a few years ago. My 33 female, husband 43 male, and I were getting gas late one night. This was a bit of a weird gas station, where two roads intersected at an angle, with the gas station being on the acute angle, if you can picture that. At the pump we chose, there were no working lights, and it was difficult to see directly from either road. We were driving a soft-top Jeep Wrangler with all of the rear windows taken off. My husband got out to pump, and I was sitting in the passenger seat looking at my phone. That's when I heard it. "I'm not gonna hurt you," a wavery voice said some distance behind me. I froze, suddenly terrified. I turned around to look out the empty space where our back window used to be, and saw what appeared to be a homeless man a little ways off. He had slightly wild gray hair, a washed-out beanie, and an oversized jacket with lots of pockets that hid his hands. I suddenly realized how dark it was, and how hard it was for anyone to see us, and I couldn't see his hands. I had a distinct feeling from deep down, so prominent I could almost hear it. "Run, but we're just pumping gas. He's just a weird homeless dude." My husband and I were from Key West. We had seen plenty of them before, and they were almost all harmless. So I slowly turned back around and went back to my phone. Yet I still heard him. The distinct sound of shuffling feet, the rustle of his jacket. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said again. "I just need some help. Do you have any money? I'm not going to hurt you." At this point, I could tell he was almost at the Jeep. We had only been there a couple of minutes, and we'd been on almost empty. There was no way the tank was full. Without warning, my husband rushed into the car and hurried to start the engine. I could tell his hands were shaking. He managed to throw the car into drive and we peeled out of there. I looked behind us and saw the man standing there, not reacting, next to the dangling nozzle my husband hadn't bothered hanging back up. As we turned out of the gas station, my husband said, "I just had the most horrible feeling. Something in me just told me to run." I looked at him in horror and told him I'd felt the same thing. I felt tears come to my eyes as I thanked him for listening to his instincts. We went home feeling quite shaken, just going over the events we had just seen and the fear we had felt. It was a day or two later that we watched a YouTube video by a security analyst, Scott Stewart, on the Kenyan mall shooting, and he said that in every event like this, there are people who said, right before it happened, "I had a terrible feeling that something bad was about to happen." He adds that some people listen to that feeling and leave the area, while others mention how much they regret not listening to it. I burst into tears hearing this, knowing the feeling he had described all too well. I had had that feeling and was one of those who ignored it. I remember crying, "Thank you," to my husband for listening to a sense of danger. Now, it is fully possible this was just a harmless person asking for money in a slightly creepy way and that nothing bad would have happened. But I can't stop remembering how the weird angles kept anyone from seeing us. I can't stop thinking about how dark it was, and I can't stop thinking about his hidden hands. And I still get full body chills remembering him say, "I'm not going to hurt you." Moral of the story, I guess. If you ever get that distinct feeling that something bad is imminent, leave the area. It may be a false alarm, and if it happens a lot, you may have a hyperactive anxiety response and might want to try Lexapro. But it's better than going through the rest of your life wishing you had listened to that feeling. There are only 5 of us on this camping trip. We keep counting 6. There were bright flashes of red in the sky. It's as if someone were waving around a flare light from space. Faint, but noticeable. We all made UFO jokes and laughed as we nailed our tents into the ground. I knew for sure that there were 5 of us. We have all been friends since early middle school, and we're celebrating our high school graduation with this getaway camping trip. The flashes of red must have stopped randomly as we made conversation while fixing up our tents. Dave managed to put his tent together the fastest and told us he was going to find some branches for the fire. I remember how he had worked with me at the local gas station last year. We used to work the night shift together, and it made working at a desolate gas station much more enjoyable than it was supposed to be. There was also Eric in the corner, still reading his tent manual, fidgeting with his signature round glasses. I wasn't as close with Eric as I was with the others, but I still remember sitting with him in math class and copying his homework one time. Ava was also there talking with Sally, my cousin. Both had decided to team up and work on one tent at a time. I also have clear memories of them hanging around at school in our usual places. In fact, I even knew Ava's younger brother, as he used to beg to go with us wherever we went. I bring this up because I'm sure there were 5 of us, including me, and that I knew everyone in the group. So Dave had gone to get some branches as we pulled out some foldable chairs and set them up around the fire pit. I remember feeling uneasy as the sun set and darkness began to consume the forest. The shadows of trees elongated around us as the minutes ticked by. Eric went to get a flashlight from his bag while we wondered what was taking Dave so long. He appeared soon after, the harsh rustling sounds of the bushes signifying his return. We were all buried in our chairs, at this point, covered by our jackets. The temperature had dropped quickly, and a slight breeze was beginning to pick up. "Geez, you guys weren't even bothered to pull out a chair for me," Dave said as he arranged all the branches in the pit. We had set up 5 chairs around the fire. I tried to rationalize the situation, but no matter how hard I focused, my head felt like it was underwater. I had perfect clarity up until that moment, but when I tried to focus on why 5 chairs were occupied when Dave hadn't sat down yet, my head seemed to just stop working, as if something was reaching in and pulling out my thoughts. Instinctually, I felt even more uneasy now, and I had placed why. The whole forest had gone dead silent. I looked around at the faces of the others and could tell that they had felt the same. Eric was fidgeting with his fingers, trying to scan around the group and spot the extra person, but it was futile. I scanned every face, each etched in worry and frowning in frustration, except for, "It's." "All right, I'll get the chair myself," Dave said, breaking the silence and somewhat alleviating the tension. I got up and offered to help him. He looked into my eyes and nodded knowingly. We headed away from the fire pit towards the tents, but I kept my eyes glued on our group. "How many people are here?" I whispered to Dave as he looked around and realized that we had indeed only packed 5 chairs. In fact, every person had brought with them their own chair. They were heavy to carry, and we wouldn't bring any extra needlessly. "There are 5, right? I mean, there are 5 chairs," Dave replied. His voice wavered as he spoke. "No, I just think maybe one of us forgot our chair," I said. My mind was struggling to address the issue head on and now sought to find rational excuses instead. I didn't quite feel in control of my thoughts. It felt like swimming in a dream, and if I tried to force myself to think about who the 6th person was, my head would begin to throb. "Yeah, that sounds about right actually," Dave said, relaxing and heading back to the group. When we walked back to the fire pit and circle of chairs, 2 chairs were empty, one for me and one for Dave. Everything was adding up now, even though we all agreed it wasn't before. Sally suggested we were all probably tired after the long hike to get here and probably just needed some sleep. She could have been right. We were all sleep deprived from waking up very early today to make it on time. Ava brought out the drinks. The whole 6-pack was emptied. We all moved closer to the crackling fire for warmth as we took sips from our cans and reminisced on memories of last year. Ava was in the middle of telling us about that one time she was home alone with weird things happening in her house when I got these sudden chills despite the pleasant warmth of the fire. What felt cozy and safe moments ago felt wrong now, all because I realized that there was a crucial detail I had missed. "Who started the fire?" I asked, completely interrupting Ava in the middle of her story and breaking everyone else's immersion. Everyone looked momentarily annoyed until they realized they had no answer. Once again, I scanned the faces staring back at me. All was barely illuminated by the light from the fire, all familiar and pale from fear. "Wasn't it you, Dave?" Eric asked. Dave shook his head. "I think the person standing behind Jenny did it," Sally said, looking over at me. I whipped my head around so quickly it hurt. My heart was pounding in my ears. There was nothing behind me except for the encompassing darkness of the woods. Staring at those tall, dark trees behind me made me feel exposed. I felt like a lost bird in a vast field. "Wait, I don't know," Sally said. Her eyes had gone wide, and she was shaking visibly. She continued to look around frantically as Ava moved over to her, placing her hands on her shoulders and trying to calm her down. "I think we should leave this place," Ava stuttered. "Yeah, something just doesn't feel right, but I can't put my finger on it," Dave said. "But it's so dark out in the forest now. We'd probably get lost if we leave now," someone else said. "Yeah, I think we should stay the night and leave as soon as we can tomorrow. Eric agreed. I tried to protest, but realized Eric was right. The woods harbored an oppressive darkness within which navigation would be near impossible. Let's not sleep in our separate tents just to be safe, Sally said. We all agreed. We only brought one-person tents with us, but we could squeeze 2 in if we tried. That way, no one would be alone at night. Following this conversation, we all got up and made our pairs. I went with Dave and Sally like always went with Ava. Eric kept complaining that he didn't have a pair, but we reassured him he did. He wouldn't accept it. I feel like at some point we all realized that there were only 5 of us, and suddenly we were all huddling up in the middle of the clearing. Why do we keep thinking there are 6 of us here? Eric asked. Sweat was dripping down his face despite the cold. We had nearly left him all alone on his own under the assumption that there was another person. My stomach turned as I squeezed my eyes shut and tried to mentally recap everyone here. My head throbbed, but I kept pushing it. There's me, Dave, Eric, Ava, Sally, and... I was pointing at each of them as I said the name. I retched and emptied the contents of my stomach on the ground when I got past Sally. The left side of my head felt like there was a knife stuck in it. My vision was blurry. Dave held me up to stop me from collapsing, and we all wordlessly started to move towards the tents as someone put the fire out. Dave helped me into a tent while the 4 outside discussed what to do. I could only focus on snippets of the conversation as the excruciating pain beating against my skull came and went in waves. Sally had the brilliant idea of arranging 3 tents together so their openings faced together at right angles in a sort of U-shape, so we could sleep as close as possible and also limit the entrance to our tents. Dave was about to go to help as they worked outside, but I clutched his hand and asked him to stay with me. The tents took some time to arrange. I started to feel a bit better once everyone got settled into their tents. A quick head count confirmed there were 5 of us. Eric would have to sleep in his tent alone, but he was more comfortable with it since all the tents were very close now. Looking back now, I think he was just trying to put a brave face on for us. I regret that moment deeply, letting him sleep in his tent alone. He was always less integrated in our group and knew that none of us would pair with him. Just before going to bed, we all agreed to leave as soon as the sun rose in the morning. I remember taking one last look outside the tent, into the forest, before trying to fall asleep. The wind had picked up, and the tree branches were swaying gently. Beyond our clearing was just pure darkness. It felt like the trees were closing in on me. With the faint moonlight illuminating our clearing, I turned my head to look over at the 2 tents we had left out and saw someone standing next to them. Despite the circumstances, sleep came quickly and easily. Ava's shrill scream woke me up in the middle of the night. Dave and I ripped our tent door open to find Sally and Ava looking into Eric's tent. We pushed them aside. Eric's sleeping bag was rolled up. He was still inside it, his head in the center, face contorted in utter agony. The rest of his body rolled around it with the blue fabric now dripping with dark blood. Dave zipped up the door of the tent. Ava was in shock. Her eyes had become glassy and unfocused. Sally was shaking her repeatedly, tears streaming down her face. Dave picked up his torch and yelled at us to get up and run. We left the campsite behind and entered the trail we had come from. The 5 of us huddled together, Dave leading in the front, as he cast his weak flashlight over the path so we could see it. All we had to help us get through this 2-hour trail was a small white circle of light. Even the moon failed to illuminate our surroundings through the dense foliage. Ava tripped and fell, twisting her ankle. We came to a stop. Someone said they knew how to splint it so we could keep going. They dragged her into the woods instead. It happened too quickly for any of us to process. Sally was about to run after Ava when Dave held her back. She struggled and managed to free herself, running into the trees to follow the echoes of Ava's screams. I was about to run after her, but Dave held me by the shoulders and shook me hard. "We need to get out of here, Jenny, please," he said. I hesitated, but jolted into motion again when Sally's voice was cut off abruptly. She had been calling out Ava's name as she ran after her. Dave and I continued to run down the trail, trying to get to our car so we could get out of here. There was nothing we could do. At some point, there were 3 of us running on the trail, Dave and I shoulder to shoulder, while someone followed us closely behind. "Dave, who's behind us?" I gasped. My heart was threatening to burst through my ribcage, and my legs burned. He turned to look at me. Confusion transformed into fear on his face, and then into rage. "You keep running," he told me, as he produced a pocket knife from his pants. He handed me the car keys, which I nearly dropped. Then he turned around suddenly and jumped at whoever was behind us. I continued to run in fear as the sounds of a struggle grew behind me. I tripped and tumbled through the trail for what felt like hours. I didn't allow myself to stop. I almost cried when the trail ended, and I walked out into the familiar car park. Not wasting a second, I ran to the car and started it up, accelerating out of that forest and onto the highway within mere seconds. I'm typing this post out at a rest stop. My phone has finally regained service, and I've called 911 to try and explain the situation. I don't think they believe my version of events, but they sent a car my way regardless. As I wait, the sun is finally starting to rise. After I hit the post button on this, I'm gonna check why the person in my back seat has been so silent the whole time. True EMS horror story. I worked as a dispatcher for a pretty small ambulance station near a fairly large city in the middle of the US. I don't know how specific I can be since this is a true story, and I'm going to tell one of the craziest stories I have from this job. We had a patient whom we will call Susan. She was a dialysis patient, and one of the services we offered was to take very unwell or disabled patients to and from these dialysis appointments. She lived with her son, whom we will call David. He was in his late 40s, and his mother, Susan, was in her late 70s or so. Every week, like clockwork, we would have a unit bring Susan to and from her dialysis treatments 3 times a week. Everyone knew her at the station because we had been doing this for quite some time with Susan. We were all familiar with her and her son. Whether it was the crew seeing her in person and taking care of her, or speaking to her or her son on the phone frequently about the appointments, as I had done, everyone knew her. Naturally, when crews had news about her health, they would report back to keep everyone in the loop with how she was. At one point, she was not feeling well at all, but she wanted to go to her dialysis appointment. So naturally, we obliged and took her in. At this appointment, while receiving dialysis treatment, she lost consciousness and was promptly taken by our crew to the hospital. When it was time again for her dialysis appointment, we gave the hospital a call to see if she had been released and was able to go to the appointment. The hospital staff informed us that she would likely be released the following day and would be receiving dialysis treatment in the hospital. Then the next treatment time rolled around, and we called the hospital, and we were told she had been released from their care the other day. This was great news, but a little strange due to the fact that we were always her first call to transport her to or from any hospital or appointment, and we hadn't transported her anywhere. We quickly moved on, however, and called David, her son, to see if she was going to require us for her treatment that day. He informed us she wasn't feeling well and that she wasn't up to it, but that he was considering taking her back into the hospital. We tell him that if he needs us to, just give us a call, and until further notice, we will cancel her trip for the day. We never get a call. Next appointment rolls around, and we call David again to ask if she will be going. He says she's sick, and she's back in the hospital. Weird again since we hadn't taken her, but it doesn't seem that off considering her health had been deteriorating. Next appointment, same thing happens. We call David. His mom is in the hospital, so we move on. Now is where things took a bit of a turn. When the next appointment came up, we tried calling David to ask about his mother's status, but he never answered or returned our calls. So, being that we had a contract with Susan and were to take her to these appointments unless told otherwise, we sent a crew to collect her for treatment. When the crew arrived at the scene, they knocked on the door to no response. They knocked again and were greeted by David smoking a cigarette. David, seeming surprised, said to the crew that they were there to pick up Susan for her appointment. David responded, stating he had forgotten to call, but Susan was still in the hospital, not doing well. The crew gave their best wishes, and David shut the door, but the crew felt like something was off. They immediately radioed to dispatch that something was wrong, and they requested we call the hospital David said she was at to see if she was still there. The hospital had no record of her being there since we last knew. So we had the crew leave the scene, and we called for a welfare check on Susan at her son's home. We heard nothing the rest of the day from the police, David, Susan, or anyone else involved. The next morning, I came into work, and the very first call I took began with, "This is Sheriff," with "I'm calling to report back on the welfare check you asked us to perform yesterday." I was nervous, as he sounded concerned, and I didn't really expect them to call us back with any news. He proceeded to let me know that upon arrival at the home, they spoke with David, who was adamant that his mother didn't feel well, but that she was home from the hospital. The police asked to just check on Susan to make sure she was all right, and eventually, David obliged, letting the police in. Once entering the home, they were met with a grim scene. though I imagine they smelled it first. They continued to explain that what the officers observed was the dead body of Susan propped up on the couch, wrapped in blankets, as if watching television. But she had been dead for a while. They approximated around 2 weeks. When speaking to David, they found that he had been changing her clothes regularly and watching TV with her. Obviously, he was suffering from some sort of mental issue and grief. But the thing was, he had never taken good care of her until she was dead. No news coverage, no updates from police further than that, nothing. Stuff like this happens in your hometown, and you'll never know. Thanks so much for tuning in. I really appreciate every single one of you. If you haven't already, please give the video a like and hit that subscribe button. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers, and I know we can get there soon with your support.